everybody, and welcome to Rocket Lasso Live. This is episode 31 of Season 3, and we are quickly approaching the season end. I'm not sure exactly when it will be, but we've got a lot to cover. We've got a hard deadline today because, first of all, we have a guest, and second of all, today is Half Res in Chicago. It's a way smaller, toned-down one, just because you don't want big crowds. And I've got a hard deadline to get out and go do that. But to introduce my guest today, we've got Rick Barret. Hello, how's it going?
Hey, Chris. Hey, everybody.
Thanks for joining us again. As always, every time there's a new version of cinema, I've got to put you on the schedule. So
I know. I'd love to be here.
Yeah.
I think I put it on my schedule before you even asked. So
yeah, you know it's coming. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, like Rick, be on the show. And you're like, yep, it's already on the calendar. I was like, oh, excellent. So everybody, if you have questions, we're going to be focused pretty much entirely on R25 today. So feel free to put questions here. We've got Rick, who is one of the people in charge of the software. So we've got the right person to ask your questions. So feel free to post. I think he's also going to be keeping an eye on the chat as well. And he's got some demo files. I've got some things that I had played around with. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, everybody start getting those questions together if you have any. But in any case, you want to talk about the launch and a little bit of an overview of what you think about this version?
Sure, yeah. Well, and I'll just pop in right first of all and say I see Crossfader saying how great that intro animation is, and folks asking like who created it, and that is the splash screen. This release was created by Zaki. I think it's fantastic. We've had great splash screens, but this is probably the best and most on point to the version. And it's really awesome that now we have been able to put in this animation, as you're booting, so you actually get to see, a little bit of motion and not just a static splash screen. So, so thanks a lot to Zaki for a really great splash screen for R25.
Yeah, excellent. I love the fact that it's animated now. It's a great little detail. It's the little things that matter. Would you like, I can pop you on the screen for your desktop if you want to maybe start talking about stuff while we see if anybody comes in with any questions.
Yeah, so I mean, a huge product launch across the entire Maxon One family of products, yesterday. And I know folks here are going to be most interested in Cinema 4D and Redshift, but some great stuff across the Redshift, the Red Giant products as well, like integrating a lot of the form functionality into Trapcode and the Predator Prey functionality and the integration of Bang. So definitely check that out. And of course, we've got the 3D motion show going on, as we speak. And obviously you're not there, you're here, stay here. That's good. But you can go back and watch the 3D motion show archives after the show. And there's more great content on Cinema 4D and all of the rest of the updates across the product line. But we're here to talk about Cinema 4D and R25. Is available now, shipped yesterday. It's available in your Maxon app. And I've seen a few questions just to let everybody know you can, it says update there in the Maxon app, but that will install it to a separate folder. So you can still have 24 installed at the same time and jump into 25 and start playing with this new interface. I know it's going to take folks a bit of time to get used to, but it's a great new modern look for Cinema 4D. We've tried to focus on, minimize some of the distractions, give you a nice big viewport, and really put more focus on your artwork. So definitely check it out. And I don't know, I'm just trying to look and see if there's any questions starting to come in.
Yeah, let's see. Crossfader asking, with common concerns about high contrast in the new UI, do you foresee there being an adjustment for it in the future?
Yeah, I mean, the guidance that we gave UX on this was to get it to a point where we wouldn't have to make dramatic changes for a while now, because I know that it's jarring for folks to change interfaces, and also it's especially jarring for Chris and our other tutorial creators who end up having to redo a lot of their content. And so we're hoping not to make dramatic changes to the UX for a while, but things like some of the contrast things, we're going to continue to listen to users on that. And I can imagine there will be some little tweaks here and there to improve things overall.
And then, yeah, I guess if you want to show the tabs and then the quick different layouts and then the new layouts, or the ability to go to the legacy.
Yeah. So probably my favorite feature of R25 is this ability to open up the various document tabs. I mean, this is something that I think we take for granted as C4D users the ability to have multiple documents open at the same time. A lot of 3D applications don't allow that. And Chris, I know you've had that experience like me where you'll be demoing at a trade show and all of a sudden you look at your window menu and you've got 50 different documents open.
Oh yeah, because of the 10 presenters before you. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is awesome because it makes it really obvious to see what documents you have open. It makes it super fast to switch between them. It's got all of sort of the types of affordances that you're used to from web browsers. You can duplicate a project really easily. You can open it. You can show it in the Explorer.
Show in Explorer is a really big deal. Like, it's so hard to go find it's like, I need to copy this material from one place to another. And it's like, oh, just right click and open it from the folder.
Right.
Very handy.
Yeah, and we've made it super easy to switch between various layouts just by clicking these tabs over here. And you can see that my list is a little bit shorter than yours probably was. We've actually made it so that you can go in here and choose which ones you want to see. So you can get some out of the way if you're not going to use them very often. And something that may not be super obvious right away, but has really been a benefit to me is that these will, when you change the layouts, they'll stay.
Can you wiggle your mouse? I'm not seeing your desktop update right now. I saw you going between the tabs. Are you moving?
Oh, really?
Yeah. It suddenly seems to have frozen up. You're still moving, but your desktop is.
Oh. Wait, let me try. It looks like I'm not sharing right now. Here, let me try sharing again. Maybe it didn't like the change. There, you got it now?
Let's see. Yep, it just refreshed. So hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, there you go. You're live
Yeah,
again.
I think I was sharing Cinema 4D and not the whole monitor, so probably when I changed layouts, it screwed it up.
Oh, that makes sense.
So yeah, but the great thing here is that these stay on the monitor that you're on now, whereas used to, I don't know if folks probably have had that situation if you work on two monitors where you change layouts and it pops over on the other monitor that you weren't working on. So now, if you're working, say you've got a YouTube chat or a YouTube video over on one monitor and you're working on Cinema 4D, on this main monitor, you can change layouts and you don't have to worry about it popping up on the wrong side. So that's a really nice advantage that we've added in R25.
Yeah, and then we didn't see the changing which ones show up. That was frozen at that time.
Oh, right. So yeah, this plus menu here, you can actually choose which of the layouts will show up. So you can add them or subtract them from that list there. And of course, here you've got the options to load a custom layout or save a startup layout, things like that. And then, yeah, as you were mentioning, Chris, this new layouts tab. So for folks who are, sort of adapting to this new layout, which really has some great advantages, which we'll go over. But you can flip this new layout switch, and this actually brings up the R23 layouts. So everything's back to where you're used to it being. You still got the new icons, but you can kind of get used to the new icons without necessarily having to sort out where everything's moved to at the same time.
And yeah, just to reiterate, then that's not going back to S24, but going back to R23 when everything was a little bit more left justified and whatnot. So.
Yeah.
Just making that clear. And then...
Yeah, we got feedback from a lot of our tutorial creators that going back to the R23 one would be the best sort of point to go back to, because that's where a lot of the content that's, that's currently online kind of is using that R23 sort of basis of a layout.
Yes. Dean, yes, Rocket Lasso plugins are compatible with 25. You do have to update. I think 25 did break all plugins again, but we immediately re-uploaded them yesterday. So just go back to your Gumroad page, download it, and reinstall, and it should be working.
Yeah, so all C++ plugin compatibility got broken with R25. Some Python plugins should still work. There's been some changes to the Python API, but I'd say probably 75% of the plugins should continue to work. That was our experience with Cineversity. And all the Cineversity plugins have been updated and are available in the CD toolbox.
Next, I'm trying to grab questions about where we're at currently. Somebody's asking if there's any chance that we'll be able to get access to this scene file.
Yeah, I don't think so. Zachy was kind enough to share it with us, but I don't know that we are going to distribute it. But I can see why folks would love it, because it is a super cool scene file.
Yep, I'm digging it.
Yeah.
And then I guess some of these, I do see everybody's questions coming in. I'm going to try and do them in a reasonable order. So don't worry, I will get to it. But while we're still on the topic of interface, the next big thing is the hot corners, I think.
Yeah, totally. So again, the putting more focus on the viewport and kind of getting some of the extra interface out of the way when you don't need it. So we've introduced these buttons that pop out specific tools when you need them. So the asset browser right here on the left side. Over here on the right side, you can pop out the material manager. And this new material manager, having it over here makes it's a super convenient place, because, you can put it in list view. You can see a lot of your materials. You can see the entire name of the materials. And you can really easily drag to the left or to the right to drag those materials into the viewport or the object manager. And then, of course, you've got options down here to switch into icon mode if you prefer that. And you can change the size of these as well. Then moving down the hot corners, we've got the coordinate manager here, which is now non-modal. It doesn't have that apply button anymore. And we've integrated the reset transform option right here, and our new virtual sliders, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then over here we have the timeline that pops up right above your power slider. So when you need to tweak an F curve, or you need to dial in things a little bit more with the timeline, you don't need to switch layouts or pop out the timeline, and have it sort of as a popover window. You can just pop it right up from the bottom. And I'm seeing some comments that folks have already worked with the UI for one day and won't switch back. And, I think that's the thing. It can be a little bit jarring to look at it at the beginning and to say, oh, now I've got to learn a new interface. But, man, it takes, a few days, a week, and then you go back to old Cinema 4D to 24, and it just doesn't look, clean and modern anymore. It just looks old.
Yeah, it's like whenever you get a new phone, it's like, okay, well, I got the new phone. It's not too different. And then one day you pick up the old one, and you're like, oh, look at this brick now. What was I even thinking?
Totally.
Somebody said that Zachy actually sells a very similar scene file on their Gumroad for $25. So if somebody puts a link, I'll share that to everybody. The hot corners are great. And then I really do like seeing the material manager vertically, because all the time the names would get cropped out, and now you can see them so clearly, like a nice long list of names. It's not like you need a giant icon to represent it. Sometimes you want to see one for it, but really at a glance, that's all you need.
Right.
And then just sneaking in that ability to right click on an object and apply it directly via the drop down is nice. So you don't even have to open up the material manager if you've already got them. When you right click on an object in the object manager.
Oh, yeah.
At the very bottom. I have to keep on moving us around with the interface.
Oh, yeah. Dude, you just taught me one. I didn't even realize they snuck that in.
Yeah, so you
That's
don't
awesome.
even need to go into, you can make new materials by right clicking on any object or get a list of the existing materials.
Yeah, I remember somebody saying that was in there, but that's the first time I've actually looked at it. So yeah, that's a really awesome new feature.
And then let's see. Yeah, what do you? I guess we're well. What do you think is next, feature
Um,
wise?
Trying to think if there's interface stuff we haven't really talked about yet.
There is a question sort of on the topic that Chad Ashley has been talking about. The virtual slider is really tough for Wacom pens to interact with. Is there any way of controlling the sensitivity of the slider or something in the future?
We did get some feedback on that. It kind of came a little too late for us to react for the release version, but we'll be looking to sort of dial that in a little bit better, I think, for Service Pack 1. But yeah, those new virtual sliders are really cool. I have heard that feedback that, they're not quite dialed in for tablet users, but the ability to just jump over here and start dragging to adjust your values is super nice. But the part of this that I love the most actually is the ability to put your cursor in here, and based on where your cursor is, you can use your up down arrows, and that's going to be how big the change is made. So you can dial by ones, tens, hundreds, and then once we get to thousands here, we can start going by thousands. So this I think is a super cool little thing for, there's all these things that are like all these numbers everywhere on the interface always, right? And this kind of, I think, brings some of that Cinema 4D playfulness to the numbers, because you can just click and drag them without necessarily worrying about the value. Mm-hmm. And you can easily, sort of, I want to make big changes or I want to make small changes. And, I see you all the time, Chris, going, 666 or 999 or,
Oh, yeah.
And trying to sort of dial in that random number that's big or small. And so I think this kind of helps with that type of a situation.
Yeah, I definitely find myself just dragging rather than aiming for the slider. I do find myself just reaching for that. What's the name of that? Like just click and drag on it, like interactive slider?
I think it's called virtual slider or interactive slider.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Virtual slider. Okay.
I probably made up a name for it, and I don't remember what it was.
VE Change is asking if Espresso had any changes. I don't think it did.
No real changes to Espresso. A lot of the focus is on the scene nodes interface and the capabilities there in the scene node system. But no, nothing on the Espresso side of things.
I think somebody mentioned, I might have bumped into this myself, that the right-click search might be broken in Espresso, but I'm not sure about that.
I'll have to check that out.
But let's see what we got next. I just posted a link to Zacky's scene on Gumroad, so if anybody wants to check it out, you can go do so.
Yeah, you mentioned right-click, and that made me think about these search boxes that we've added, which are super cool. So you just right-click, and if you're trying to find, say, the compositing tag, you don't have to go find it anymore in that menu. You just right-click and start typing compositing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And you have that in the materials too. You can in this texture pop up here. If you're just looking for the checkerboard, you just start typing, and it pops right up.
Oh, okay. So that's the functionality that is in scene nodes, but now kind of in all these different menus. That's
cool. Yeah. We added it for scene nodes to be able to wade through sort of the ports and options there a little bit better, and then we realized, heck, this would be really useful everywhere. So we started putting into more and more of the pop-ups. And then the dynamic palettes, we didn't really talk about those yet, but you've got the option now. This left palette, is going to dynamically change based on what mode you're in. So, if you're in the point mode, you're going to get point-related tools. In edge mode, you're going to get the edge-related tools, the polygon, etc. And then the object mode. The really nice thing here is that, like when we introduced the placement tools in 24, we really didn't have a place in the interface to put them. We kind of had to cram them in. Mm-hmm. But this makes perfect sense. When you're in object mode, you're going to want to place objects. So we finally had a place to put them, and so this dynamic palette allows us to make much better use of the interface. And again, I think it allows people to stay just in the standard layout more. They're not going to have to jump to we made it easier to jump between layouts, but I don't think they're going to have to as much. Switch into the modeling layout, for instance, because more of these tools are immediately accessible here. And I think you showed on your video, but the only place we're really using this is with a document mode filter, but it actually also can change the palette based on the currently active tool or the active object type. So, there's lots of options there if you want to dig in and start making your own optimized layouts to sort of tweak how palettes are going to show up based on the object, the tool, or the document mode.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to edit their interface in a very advanced way very often, but I did find it very intuitive to set it to like, the active mode. And it's almost like you can't mess it up. You just make whatever tool you're in, any buttons you drag in, they're going to be there when you're back in that mode again. So yeah, I did find that very intuitive. There's a couple questions coming in about like assets going into the content library. And let's see, somebody's asking about Redshift materials. And then somebody was saying that the LIB4...
Yeah. So we can talk about some of that. So, the asset browser in 24, is great because it's given us this opportunity to make assets much more accessible to all of you. You don't have to pre-download these huge asset libraries. They're just always online all the time. We can add to the asset library anytime. And in fact, we've been doing that in May, June, July, August, every month since S24 launched. We've been adding to the asset library. And so we've added some additional mocap motions. We've just added some trees. We had some tools like saws and hammers and things like that. I used kit bash elements.
I used all that new mocap data in my Slicer commercial. Like I got a whole
that's there. Awesome. Yep. Yeah. So this is again part of providing that ongoing subscription benefit to all of our Cinema 4D and Max on One subscribers. And you can always click this new content button to see all of the latest content that we've added. So here you're seeing the stuff that we added in August and September. And yeah, we'll be continuing to add more and more every month moving forward. If you have an old content browser library, you can bring that into the new asset library. There's an option right here in the Create menu, Import Legacy Lib4D. And you just go ahead and click that and choose your Lib4D, and it'll bring it right into the content browser or into the asset browser.
Yeah, I had somebody commenting yesterday that the old content browser is now gone, and I didn't even realize it was gone because I like the assets browser so much that I've already completely moved my workflow into that. So I didn't even realize. I recorded the entire video and didn't realize until yesterday that it was even gone.
Yeah, and the main thing that was holding us back was getting the preset system built in. And so that, of course, was one of our big efforts for the 25 cycle, getting all of these presets built in. And I'm sure we'll talk more about the preset system. But yeah, now everything can be in the asset browser. We can deliver more assets to you on a regular basis, whether they be presets, objects, or even capsules. So yeah, super excited. I saw that some people are asking about Redshift assets in the asset browser, and that's definitely on the list. We're continuing to work each release to bring Redshift, sort of tighter into the Cinema 4D ecosystem, and that's definitely something that we're going to be working on here in the coming months.
Actually, I didn't even end up bringing it up in my video, but there's a couple tiny integrations with Redshift a little bit more closely, isn't there? Like some stuff with lights and maybe the camera. I wasn't clear on the camera.
Yeah, the camera isn't in there, but
okay.
the lights. But the lights, we do have the option here within any of your classic Cinema 4D lights. You have an option to convert that light to Redshift. And it takes and converts all of those classic C4D light options into a Redshift light. And there's been some work to, sort of like in 24 or concurrent with 24, we worked on the render settings. We've got some options now in the, we sort of reworked the UX of the Redshift light. It's very soft touch, but just kind of trying to put things in a bit more logical order and a little bit friendlier for folks. So there's that. And then also we've started to integrate the Redshift items into the menus. So you'll see here when you go to the light menu, you get all the Redshift lights as well.
If you have Redshift installed.
If you have Redshift installed, right. So yeah, piece by piece, we're bringing things, increasingly, it's always tricky with Redshift because we want to honor sort of the experience that users have with Redshift and all of the other DCCs as well. And we want to honor what Redshift is while, starting to bring it more and more sort of into the same type of UX ideas and stuff as C4D has. But, you saw that with the render settings. We made those changes sort of concurrent with S24 to add the basic and advanced modes in the render settings, and we've now integrated those UX changes to the render settings across all of the various DCC integrations. So, we're definitely thinking about how to do this sort of in an integrated and holistic way for Redshift.
To answer somebody's question, wait, I've lost it. Somebody's asking, because in my R25 video, I did spend some time talking about the updated cappuccino, and that actually wasn't specifically a new feature in 25, but it came out, I think, in Service Pack 1 for 24. But because I had never brought it up or made a big deal out of it, and so many people in my original tutorial and so many people even in the live streams, everybody was like, I want to be able to record dynamic placement. So I just wanted to make a really big deal out of that. Yes, you can now record all of those in real time. So that's why that got integrated into that video.
Yeah, totally. In fact, I think the reason that feature exists is because some Maxon folks were watching our S24 live stream just like this, and we talked about that, and I think the next day they had actually built it in. So we didn't make folks wait until R25 for that. We just put it right into 24 SP1, and that's a great thing, is that I am sure there's 3 or 4 at least of our developers who are on here watching me make a fool out of myself right now. And they love being a part of this community and hearing what folks are interested in, and really seeing all of the unique ways that folks turn around and use these tools that we didn't even think about when we created them.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So often when we're working on plugins over here, that's like, oh, we have an idea of what the tool is going to do. Actually, when we were making Ricochet, the original concept and all of our prototype scenes were like, oh, let's make a whole bunch of cubes floating around and we'll bounce around those. And the concept completely, even though it can totally do that, the concept moved into, no, you feed it into one object and bounce it around on the inside of an object. That wasn't like the original pitch didn't have that at all. So,
yeah, well, and I think that's what's great about the C4D and motion graphics user is that, the creativity is just so insane. Like to think of like all these ways that you can abuse the tools in order to sort of bend them to really create, not just real world stuff, but stuff that people didn't really imagine,
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to pile a couple of these questions up together because I think the answer to a lot of them is probably not yet. But somebody's asking about HB modeling scripts and if you're familiar with them. And then following up immediately, somebody's asking about UDMI and ACES CG.
UDIM, yeah. So, HB modeling scripts, very familiar. Holger is one of our beta testers, and really appreciate his contribution to the community. I wholeheartedly recommend folks check those out. And then as far as UDIMs, that is, again, a not yet answer. It's certainly something that is on the radar, but not something that we've had the resources to tackle yet. And then ACES CG, of course, Redshift just introduced that in a couple months ago as part of the Open Color IO 2. So it's great to have that in Redshift, and I think that it's revealed some opportunities to better integrate it into Cinema 4D. So that's something that we'll be looking at in the near future.
Excellent. Let's see. Definitely some people are asking about capsules. We'll get there for sure, because that is definitely one of the more exciting things. I'm just checking of any questions before we move on to something new. Nope, seems like we're good. You want to maybe jump into a little bit of scene node and capsule stuff?
Sure. Well, actually, why don't we, before we jump into that, because I have a feeling that you and I are going to spend the whole rest of the time
Oh,
on
okay.
that.
That should be the last thing. Yeah. Once we
So,
go in, we're not getting out.
but real quick first, I want to show the
Oh,
preset
geez.
system.
I totally would have brought this up first if I thought of it.
Yeah. This preset system is so cool. I mean, like I said, tying the presets into the asset browser was one of the things that we didn't get in the 24 cycle. That was one of the big asks for 25, so that we could integrate all the presets into all of the keywording and the fast searching and all of that we have with the asset browser, and being able to distribute the presets on an ongoing basis. And so, we added all of, the standard presets and the ability to go in here and go into a gradient, and, you've got your typical load save preset. Of course, when we did that, we also made it so that this pop-up, is searchable. So, as you start to have more and more presets, you can easily filter it down to the ones that you're looking for, which is super cool.
And that's just a mini version of the asset browser, right?
Totally. And that, of course, all your color swatches are in there as well. Really, all of those typical preset types that we've had historically with Cinema 4D. But the really cool thing was that as we were looking at how to integrate the sort of set as default behavior, which was using the content browser, it was there. This opportunity arose to make a really powerful system that will take any of the things with attributes, objects, tags, tools, and make it possible to create multiple presets for those things. So we've got this new drop down here in the asset browser, or in the attribute manager, that you can just drop it down and really easily choose between multiple presets. And so if we wanted to, sort of create our own, I mean, let's try Hebo.
Good old Hebo.
Or I don't know. It's Gibson. We need to make these bigger, I guess. There we go. I feel like I'm picking fonts that aren't working. There we go.
There's one.
So, we can go in here and maybe change the bevels. And maybe we save this as chiseled, And now, we can easily apply chiseled text, or we can jump in and try different font styles. But, this isn't limited to fonts, of course, but, this sort of has seemed to be a very cool way to show off the capabilities here. I think that this is one of those things that as folks start to use the system more and kind of get it through their head that they can do this, they're going to start building out this huge library of presets of, like compositing tag, for instance. I can't ever remember how do I make a matte object or a shadow catcher, what combination of checkboxes. Now we can just have a preset for that.
Yeah.
And if you have specific elements where, like, this horizontal spacing, let's say I just want to modify that and have a horizontal spacing, you can right click and just choose save selected as preset, and it's just going to take those attributes that you have selected and save those. So you can apply something else and then apply just that spaced out sort of on top of it without affecting the other attributes. Again, you pop on this and you get that pop-up searchable asset browser. And then you have the option here to click the crown icon on any of these. And what that's going to do is that's going to make that the default. So now every time I create a new text element, it's going to default to that futuristic preset.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, so some super cool stuff. And of course, you can use the asset browser to create custom thumbnails. You can add keywords. Really powerful tool set here with the new preset system.
Yeah, and it's not limited to the object and the object manager. As you mentioned, you can do this in a material, like have a purely luminant material, and that's now a preset you could load. But I thought it was really cool. You can even go inside, make a shader, go and make a noise shader, and you can save presets of a noise shader. So it kind of like filters all the way. Oh,
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it filters all the way through the system. So yeah, take like Naki and do an inverted version with a different seed. And it's like, okay, cool. There's almost like a brand new noise to play with.
Totally. Yeah, that's a really great suggestion. Yeah, I'm going to play with that for sure.
Yep. Well, yeah, all the places that I constantly change, where fonts or text objects, obviously, and changing the default font and whatnot. And I always, for myself, I hate, because I'm always making tutorials and doing live streams, I like leaving everything vanilla. So I don't want to change the default, but I can make as many presets as I want and then quickly jump to them. So that's a wonderful addition. And then it's really cool, as you said, this kind of goes to anything that has attributes, because this also applies to plugins. Like I can open up a copy of Ricochet and create a couple of different presets inside of Ricochet and be able to jump between those as well.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So this is, I think this is one of those things that people are going to really start to appreciate more and more in their daily workflow. And it's going to really hurt if they have to jump back to a previous version once they start building out these preset libraries.
Yes, agreed. And yeah, I think the main ones are going to be changing the text object, changing certain materials, changing cloner, because there's so many different ways of using a cloner. So building some different presets there. So yeah, that's going to be huge.
Somebody asked about the circle to the left, and that's basically denoting whether it's a full preset or a partial preset. So you get sort of this half-filled circle when it's a partial preset, and the full presets are the open circle.
Yep. And then, yeah, all of those will be listed inside of your full asset browser under your presets as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they're even all visual there.
And again, we have the ability to push all of this stuff as part of the Maxon provided content. So it's, we probably don't want to blast people's preset libraries like crazy, but, I wouldn't be surprised if we start giving you some more gradient patterns or some more color swatches. Or maybe even some various options in some of the, like I mentioned with the compositing tag, or some different noise presets that we might populate for you guys.
Let's see. Somebody's asking if there's a way to transfer your presets and get them onto a different machine of yours.
Yeah, so, it's all the same sort of asset browser functionality. So when you create a preset, if I go down here and choose Save Preset, it asks you what database you want to put it in. So, I really recommend that folks, rather than by default, we store it into the preferences, or you could store it into the scene. I really recommend that people create a new database and sort of have their own database. That's just a folder on your computer that Cinema 4D manages and puts these presets into. And if you do that, then you've kind of already got a portable version of the preset. And
not
then
even necessarily portable. You could just link one version of Cinema into the folder of the other one, and so they're both looking at the exact same one.
Right. And you can zip it up and send it to somebody. You see this JP, this is Jonas Pill's preset library that he started building out that he shared with me. And so I have it loaded currently into my asset browser. And then if you've got a set of presets that are kind of in a different database that you want to export out, you can just right click and choose export latest version or export all versions, or you can just copy them to a different database. So we could copy these over to the JP database, and now they'll be in that database as well.
Yep, it's all there. It's in the world of the asset browser, but there's so much more functionality to it now.
Yeah.
Let's see. Capsules. We'll get to capsules soon. Joel, just to reiterate, the difference between a preset and a partial preset. A preset is every attribute in that object gets overridden. A partial one would be like saying, I want to override the font and the height, and then only those will update as you switch between them. So just a quick reiteration of that. Yeah, presets. Yeah. You could definitely link into them with new versions, so they shouldn't die through different.
And
versions.
I think we kind of covered it, but question about whether you'd be able to easily move the presets to later versions. This is the asset browser is our format for assets that obviously we use ourselves to deliver assets to you. It's going to be a consistent format moving forward. So absolutely, you can anything that you create is going to work in future versions as well.
Let's see. Nicholas is formally requesting an official Maxon drop to floor plugin which
Ah,
that would be good. But I know that we have a way of doing something. But that would be a transition into capsules,
into
wouldn't it?
capsules. Yeah. So this is actually one of my favorite little capsule uses. We create a cube, and forever, we've had the request to be able to modify the axis of a primitive object while keeping it primitive. Well, one of the capsules that's available is the geometry axis capsule, or the geometry axis modifier. And if you drag that right onto this object in the object manager, we can adjust the axis. And so now, we can go ahead and, rotate this from the bottom. We can, use our handles and make it taller while having it stuck to the floor. And of course, that doesn't just work with that axis, but it works with all of the axes. So yeah, you can dial that in. There's some similar ones like geometry resize is really handy too, because you can put that on a whole bunch of objects and you can lock them into a specific target size on a specific axis, or you can adjust all the axes.
Oh, interesting. I didn't play with that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we're transitioning into nodes, why don't we talk about the whole concept of capsules, where they live, what they do, and how to apply them?
Totally. Yeah. So, capsules, this is something that when we released S24, we started building out some of these sort of introductory capsules. We had the 7-segment display and the dual mesh and the greeble. And, people were really excited about them, but it was kind of tempered by the fact that they could only really be used in the scene manager. And we realized that we had an opportunity to make them available to users and in conjunction with classic C4D workflows. And that really gives us an opportunity to sort of create scene nodes features, but still have them be benefit users who are still in classic C4D. And, while we haven't yet built out scene nodes enough that you can move your workflow there entirely. So, this idea of taking these capsules, these smart node-based assets, and making them available in classic Cinema 4D was kind of born. And yeah, I think it's super exciting to be able to start bringing some of this plug-in light functionality to users, in the and make scene nodes sort of more accessible to everybody.
Yep. Yeah, right now it's largely parametric modeling things that you can do now, which is pretty cool. Like we now
Right.
essentially have a parametric extrude, inset, lots of selection tools, and like so many on top of that, and then the ability to, of course, go and create your own. But yeah, even just to do a basic one, I don't know. Do you want to do a quick kind of modeling demo, or I could take control and do it? What do you
Sure.
want?
Why don't you take it?
Okay, let's do that. Hopefully nothing freezes up. I'll switch over to my desktop. Right now, this is a pinball machine that I've been working on for tonight's half-res. So it's a pinball machine that works entirely inside of Cinema 4D with the arrow keys. I'll just spend a split second and show. If I hit play here, I can hit left and right, and the flippers go, and I can shoot the ball, and it's a full-on pinball machine. So that's fun. But I'll pause that. That's what we're looking at today, although I did update it to be in 25. Okay, so brand new scene file. And you can always hit this little plus button up here and open up a new tab now. And actually, I made my own. Well, I don't need the new layout for this. Opening this up, I can move into the nodes tab. And now we've got a giant list of all the nodes inside. But I'm not in the scene node workflow at all. So keeping it very simple, I'll make a disk shape, hit NB. And let's make a couple of extra subdivisions in here, just for fun. And let's modify it somehow. So the main folders you'll stick to for right now are going to be the geometry modifiers. And I like putting this in list view and shrinking it all the way so you can kind of see all the names, especially since there aren't really custom icons yet, or there's only a few. We're going to be sticking around with the geometry modifiers and the geometry selection. When we're talking about modeling, that's where we're going to stay. But we can do more, which I'm sure Rick will show us some of that. But to begin with, we got our geometry modifier, so we can use anything you see here. As a very basic one, here is solidify. So If I drag that in as a child, as a parametric modifier, it's kind of like a deformer. That's the way I've been thinking of it. We've now got thickness on this. It's kind of like a parametric extrude that's closed the cap, or as we always did in the past, using a cloth NURBS. But now we've solidified this. But let's delete that. We don't need that. And instead, I'll do an extrude. Can I drop it directly on there? Okay, it creates it, but as a child. Okay. So that's now extruding everything. An important thing to note, you can tell because it's messing up the Phong, if I go down to the bottom, every individual polygon is getting extruded, but there's a setting inside of it, which is, let me turn off the safe frames. There is a setting inside of it for use islands, which is great, and that means everything, it kind of melts the walls away in between them. But using this, we can actually, the variation won't work with offset islands. I can crank up this offset variation, and every single one gets extruded a slightly different amount. And once again, parametric, it's on a disk shape, but I could switch that over to being a sphere and just drag that onto the sphere. And now the sphere is what's going to be getting that effect. So keep in mind, this is parametric. But the other thing is we can use all of these, but there's also the selections. Now, Rick, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any way of visualizing the selection right now. So,
really, the best way is to pile and extrude on, or to use a material.
Yes. Okay. I'll talk about that workflow then. I was just making sure I didn't miss something. But one of the new things is this select node, which I'm very happy about. We definitely needed something like this. The select node, you're able to type in pretty much all the defaults you would think you could and create selections that way. So in order to show this, what's the best way? I'm going to type in the word odd. So we're going to be selecting only the odd polygons. And now if I turn this extrude back on, then you now see every other ring is being selected and extruded. Okay, let me make those islands so we can see each of them randomly extruded up based on every other selection. It's kind of fun in a disk. I didn't know it would alternate.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess it depends if it's an odd number or an even number. It's going to fluctuate. That makes sense, where it's like the first ring, the second ring. But yeah, so we're now making those selections. But let's also create a store selection. So right after that select, I'll say store selection. And I would like to store this current selection, which is currently the odd ones, but I'm just going to call this 1. So that's my selection 1. And you see I've got a selection tag that automatically got created called 1. So even if I turn off this extrude, I could make a material, double click, drag it onto the disk, and say I would like to, well, first of all, let's colorize it to something. I would like that to be limited to this selection tag. And now you can see that that is what is getting highlighted. So every other one. So now moving it back into our original select, we can change that to even. And now you see the opposite ones were selected. We could type in 1 through, 25. And now 1 through 25 is selected. We could say, let's see if this works, odd or 25 through 100. And now, let's see. Well, maybe not the 25 through 100. Maybe that didn't work. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's 25 through 100. Did I do that wrong? Or
I'm not sure if you can mix the...
Oh, maybe not the text that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can. Yeah, but you could say 25 through 100.
Chat's asking if you can move our heads away from the object manager. I'm not sure where you can put them.
Yeah, there's not a great spot these days. I'm going to go in the bottom left. I don't think that's terribly important right now. Yeah, I've been moving us around the entire time you were talking.
We need to make a more live stream friendly layout with a spot for chat heads.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, okay. Well, now I'm selecting 25 through 100. I can say comma 200. Comma 200, comma 150, and is it comma? Maybe it's not liking my 25 through 100. Am I doing that wrong? Because that is working. Comma. I could have sworn I did this in my demo.
Your screen's so small I can't quite see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, those are just comma, 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 and then I thought I could do comma 1 through 22. Yeah, that works.
Hey.
I'm not sure what I was doing wrong. But yeah, you can see I was able to do individual ones and then something through a list, or we could do the odd ones. And we'll make that even more complex in a little bit. But for now, I'm just going to say select all. So I've selected all of the polygons, and then I can do something like a shrink selection and say shrink that selection, and that shrunk, and then it got stored. But that means if I extrude, it's going to be extruding only where I had shrunk my collection. So I could shrink once, and now let's shrink after that again. It's not represented, we're still linking to that earlier step, so we can't see it. But I'm now shrinking by 1. Let me say I'm going to shrink 2 times, so that'll shrink 2. And then I'll do another extrude. And then I'll shrink, let's say, 3 times. And then I'll do another extrude. So I'm parametrically making this series of extrudes. Each one of those could be modified, get rid of the variation, maybe go down into the negative, and take that entire shape. And now I shall put another select and say select all. So I'm reselecting everything, and then put in the modifier and solidify and add some thickness onto that overall shape. So now that actually has some volume to it. So the ability to start layering and layering and layering and doing parametric modeling in the simplest way, is pretty cool. That is still, I think, probably selecting all. I'll just duplicate that select. I'd probably do things like name this select.all, just so I know that that's a select all. That way it's really quick for me to make a duplicate of it and know that I've selected everything again. And I'm not sure what will work, but I kind of want to melt everything. So let me try and untriangulate. And is there an angle? And create n-gon. Yeah, so now I've melted everything away and created nice clean n-gons on top of it. So, and once again, this entire thing is parametric. I could go back to the original disk shape and modify whatever I want, like modify the inner radius and pull it out. And now it's shrinking from the inside and the outside. Add additional disk segments or make more rotation segments. It's all a big parametric setup. That is, you don't even have to consider these nodes at this point. Yes, they are nodes, but you could just drag them directly in, drop them on your objects, and layer them up. Scrolling through some chat.
Yep. There's some questions about being able to see the indices in the viewport of the polygons and points, and I agree that'd be super handy. That's something that we'll be looking to add in the future.
Yeah, and I would love to be able to see the selection just live somehow, some sort of outline. But
you can in scene nodes in the scene manager. I think we've run into a bit of a limitation with the translation between the scene node system and the classic C4D system to do it in the capsules.
Mm-hmm. But to take all of these ideas, I'm going to delete everything. And let's quickly take a look at making one of these yourself from scratch. So here's all these different geometry modifiers. What you can do is go into your assets construction, and a couple different types here are able to be dragged into your object manager. In this case, I'll grab a geometry modifier group and drop it in as a child. And now, if I double click on that, it will pop open a node editor. So I'm not inside of the scene nodes. It's more like I'm inside this specific object. And here you can see that it wants to take geometry in, and in this case, it'll just be whatever its parent is, and then it wants geometry out. So we could then feed nodes into this midpoint, do anything we want to them, and then output that result. So this might be good to jump into my node 2 layout and open this up. So now I'm inside this, and there's that final geometry. Let's go back to nodes, and we can do simple things in here. Let's not go and do anything too crazy, but we can go back into the exact same modifier list, and it might be good to show the text a little bit more. The modifier list, and we could select anything we want here. I can drag in an inset, select all of the geometry, output all of the geometry, and now you see every single individual polygon is getting inset. We should probably first select all the polygons. So I will say geometry selection and sneak in a select all, and then after the inset, then I will take a extrude, and where do we get an extrude, interject that one, and I see every single one of those got extruded. And then I guess I hadn't even been thinking, but yeah, we could merge different geometries and output those to do even crazier things, but keeping this simple for a live stream. We just do a couple of tiny little extrudes. We could add variation on there if we want, sort of like a very simple greeble setup. In fact, the inset could also get random variation in how far those go. So you can see we've added a whole bunch of variation on top of that. That's all happening inside of a single geometry modifier group, and we can now control it via these individual nodes all stacked up, creating a single modifier. Actually, something I'm pretty sure you can do, Rick, but I haven't specifically done, is would there be a way of packaging this up essentially as it is and making it appear in this list?
As a capsule itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Just if you just select the capsule in the object manager, select the geometry modifier group in the object manager, without any of the nodes selected. You can just go to create new asset or save asset. Can't remember what the menu is called. Convert to asset. No, just in the node editor now. Go to convert to asset. You're a little behind me, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, apologies. Okay, yeah, that's why I first clicked on this. It's like convert to asset, and it's a geometry modifier group, and I can just call this, I don't know, I'll just say Greeble 2, and hit OK. And let's see. So where might that have? Is that going to be in the preset? Because it was a geometry modifier. If you just search for it,
I think you'll find it, but I'm not sure what category you put it in. I've got you in a pretty small screen on my monitor.
Yeah, I've got Greeble 2 here. So let's see if I could drag that in. But that got created. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah, I could totally drag it as Greeble 2 in here. I'm just curious how we could put in the menu, because isn't it supposed to be a thing that they can be created or moved around?
Yeah, like if you want to put it in your...
If I wanted it in this master menu.
Just, I think you should be able to just drag it in there.
All right, so I'll make how do I make a new one? Oh, pop it out. Or are you saying I could drag it from here into there? Oh, maybe that would work. I'm going to call it 3. Okay. Doesn't seem to have appeared in there.
No.
Or find my created one and drag it in. Doesn't like that either. I'm pretty sure there's a process. I just couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah. And honestly, it's kind of a little hard for me to follow where you're at, because I'm a few seconds behind you.
Yeah. Apologies for that. But anyway, I just wanted to show off a little bit of that quick capsule stuff, because it's pretty powerful. But would you like to take over again, Rick, and maybe show some of the other assets that already got built and the idea of creating that type of thing?
Sure.
Or maybe even the splines. Okay, swapping back to you. And there we go. And I'm going to move us down to the bottom left again. Okay, you're in control.
Okay. Yeah, so, again, some of those things that we had showed back in, or let's do a platonic, because that's more fun. Some of those things that we had shown back in S24, the Greeble and the dual mesh, so going in here and in the geometry modifiers, we can apply a dual mesh and we get this really cool, effect of kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of a dual, I don't know, it's a dual mesh effect. Yeah. How do you describe this?
It's kind of like an organic atom array in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And then, same thing, you can pull in the Greeble. Let's turn off the dual mesh real quick, and we'll turn on the Greeble. I actually made some, the Greeble's one that I made, and I actually made some tweaks to it in this build. So now it has this new mode that's sort of using an interpolated mesh plus weight, and that allows you to, adjust it and not have it sort of, it's not as finicky, I guess, as it was before. So yeah, you can create all of these different Greeble effects. And then, of course, you've got all of sort of the typical modeling operations, chamfering, insetting, beveling, the subdivide. We've also got some capsules that are pre-built here for like, we've got one for grass, which doesn't want to drag over for some reason. But also this atom array. So this is something where a user had actually asked me, hey, could I get an atom array like we have in classic C4D, but I want to be able to rotate the bars, the cylinders. So, if you take these rotation segments down to 4 and actually being able to rotate the orientation of these.
I see.
And, that was something that I didn't even have to ask the developer to build. I just, we just added it into a capsule. And, as we built a new atom array capsule. And then, we introduced the splines with R25. We've started building out a spline core within C nodes. And so you can access all of the the spline primitives that we've built into that new spline core. And then again, you've got stuff like the 7-segment display. And then like we've added a linear arrow. So, you can adjust the width of the arrow, you can adjust the length. We've got, sort of different tips that you can apply on the ends of the arrow. And then, by the same token, a radial arrow, circular arrow. So again, here you can dial in, your preferred arrowheads. And, again, these are the types of things that maybe wouldn't have justified, programming a primitive for before, but it's really easy to distribute these as capsules and provide these things in, object-like functionality. And then, we've got one that users asked me for a whole lot, surprisingly, the segment, basically just the idea of a straight line. Looks like let's see here. Basically just the idea here of a straight line, which doesn't seem to want to be selected here for some reason.
It rejects. You can make it from scratch in the capsules. That's the only way I've done it. But yeah, I actually didn't realize that the spline primitive was even here as a collection, or that there was extra ones in there.
Yeah, we may have hit a little opportunity for improvement there. But yeah, the ability to do just a straight line. So building out these spline primitives, building out custom mesh primitives is something we can do, moving forward. And then, yeah, all the geometry manipulations, I think, are the most fun thing right now. Something that folks, do a lot is just trying to select, all of the elements that face in a certain direction,
Oh, yeah.
And so you can select facing, and then you, again, just go in and pop a store selection in, and we'll store that as 1, and then go ahead and, create a material and go ahead and filter it. And probably because this is a platonic, I need to increase my tolerance. So yeah, you can really easily get just the polygons, on the top, the bottom, adjust your tolerance and opposite. And of course, you can stack modeling operations on after this. So we can go in and say, let's extrude that. And, maybe inset it. Pop that, before the extrude. So again, just like you showed, this proceduralism, fun procedural modeling, that we could do with the scene manager, and everybody was craving being able to do with the object manager, and now with capsules in classic C4D, it's possible.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm reading some of the questions again. Do you have a demo of the flight path stuff? I didn't put that in my video because I just wasn't familiar enough to go and tackle it. But that's a more advanced asset that you guys put together.
Yeah, so we talked about splines. Another big area that we built out in R25. Sorry, I had to remember what version I was on. Is data. So one of the things we really wanted to do was make it possible to, and this one's not put together as a capsule, but in the node system. But it could be, this is basically a capsule that's being shown in the node system instead of the object manager. So this is available in capsules, but what this is doing basically is, and to show you the dirty details here, right? We actually are importing a CSV file of all of the airports in the entire world. And then I've built out an asset here so that you can, adjust the radius of the globe. You can choose different pins. So like we can switch to that marker, or we can have little flags in each spot. And then, we've got changing the labels on the text, and then the flight paths. And the way that I built this out was that you can actually just type in, what flight path you want. So if we wanted to say add a new one from ORD to Miami, for instance. We just click that, and now we've got a new flight path going from Chicago to Miami. What we've also done with this is we've built out a new, just a slightly different file of this. We've added this command line argument option. So if you put in a flight path here, and I've set a default value, and that's feeding into that field where you put what flight path you want. And now you can actually, in the command line, type, render this file flight path JFK to LAX, and you'll get a render of that flight path. It just sort of dynamically builds it, in the background. This is super cool, and really just the tip of the iceberg of what you can do with the data integration. There's also a bar chart capsule that you'll find in the asset browser, and this is another one of those areas that you're going to see a lot more things being built up. Something I haven't really shown, but I guess I'll give you a sneak peek of it here. Let me see if I have a version of it that I can show. I actually, the GoPros store a whole lot of information, metadata into the file. Let's see if this file's the right one. No, maybe I can't show it. But the GoPros store a whole bunch of metadata into the file, and you can use a tool online to output that as CSV. And so I actually did a little dashboard for a little go-kart race that I did. Wish I could find the file.
Yeah, if you do find it, you have to come back on and show us. But yeah, I super glossed over it in my overall video just because I didn't have any good demo set up. But something that seems incredibly powerful for a lot of people in like their actual real world job is the CSV importing. And for anybody who doesn't know, CSV is just comma separated values, which I didn't know until like a year ago. It was like, what is a CSV? But yeah, you can bring in that.
So yeah, here you can see that it's actually reading how fast I was going. They really limit the speed of these go-karts on the cruise ship, okay, guys? So I would drive a lot faster. But what's really cool is like you even see like the GoPro records the GPS data, and I was able to use that to actually generate a spline path of the racetrack, and show where I'm at. And again, this ties together the splines and the data work that we did in R25, in the same way, really, that flight paths thing does. This would not be possible if we hadn't done the work with the flight paths in order to be able to draw a spline between the two locations with interpolation. So, the data and the splines, folks probably can't see a whole lot of the benefit of that immediately because we haven't had the opportunity really to start building out the capsules that will make use of those. But yeah, these are going to really expand our capabilities.
And then I don't know if you have a good demo for it because it's tricky, but it's just something I'm not qualified to talk about. But can you talk a little bit about the command line stuff?
Yeah, well, I kind of showed it briefly here. This is basically feeding a command line argument into one of our ports, and you basically give it a name and give it a default value if it's not provided.
Yeah, for me, it's such a different world because I've literally never done command line anything. It's like, I guess I know that it existed, but the idea of like launching a Cinema 4D render without ever opening Cinema 4D is the part that I trip over. I get it, but it's also like, wow, that's a very specific job type would find that crazy useful.
Totally. I actually was just chatting with one of our users this morning, who some of this global pins asset was inspired by my meeting with him, and does a lot of work for travel shows. Showing flying from one place to the other, and this was basically a big part of that work was here's this city and here's that city, and drawing an animation between those two cities. So yeah, I think that this, for certain types of especially broadcast users, this really taps into what they need on a regular basis. Somebody asked about JSON. That's definitely on the radar. JSON, it turns out, is a little bit more complex of a format than we even envisioned when we got started with the data integration project. CSV is pretty linear and straightforward in rows and columns, but JSON, the tricky part is really just figuring out the best way to let users get at the parts of the data that they want access to.
Okay, somebody's asking, and this is a fine philosophical question. Demi's asking about what's the point of having a melt node if we can use the melt deformer on a selection node? But a lot of that is that things are getting built into the world of nodes, and then I'm excited for the day when those nodes are built with the ability to be fed lists of data and be fed arrays and be able to do different things. But yeah, right now there is going to be some overlap, but that's more that this exists in the world of nodes, and now we happen to be able to extract it out and put it onto the object. But that is also an individual node to put into an entire string of nodes. And like you already saw, there's a whole bunch of new ones that we don't have in vanilla cinema.
Yeah, totally. And, for instance, a lot of those spline primitives, they're just copies of what we had in Cinema 4D, but putting them in the node infrastructure gives us the opportunity to build things off of them. If we didn't have the text splines, we wouldn't be able to draw text dynamically based on the database, for instance.
Yeah, right now, you could go and make through nodes and even bring it in as a capsule, but as the geometry capsule, or I forget what it is, the mesh capsule. Yeah, you could make a brand new text object from scratch that has new properties that only you built in. It's a pre-greebled text. And it's text exists in two places, but they do different things right now.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw it, Chris, but right before the show, I saw that Quasar tweeted he created a procedural bottle generator as a capsule. So you could adjust the height of the bottle and the height of the little soap dispenser part and the taper of the bottle. So some really cool things that I think people are going to be able to create as we put more capabilities into the C nodes architecture, and now that they can pull those out in the form of capsules. I'm looking forward to see what you create, Chris.
Yeah, I haven't gotten too much of a chance. I spent a lot of time making it my S24 city generator, kind of bringing it in. But I would love conceptually to break that apart into individual segments of here's the road generator part, and then you'd feed that into the next thing, and that will generate the building part, and that'd be really fun. But yeah, there are so many cool opportunities, and even behind the scenes in the beta forum, I've seen people making some pretty cool things. So as those start getting out into the world, it's going to be exciting. And this is also the first pass of this moving into the object manager to be usable. I mean, as far obviously there's a lot of kind of crazy things people could make, but as far as the simple things like the extrude and the selections and the insets and whatnot, should people be comfortable using those in a production workflow and be confident that when they open it in a future version that those will still continue to behave?
Yeah, I mean, I think that things inside the scene node system are still liable to change. We're still very actively developing and reacting to user feedback there. But once something gets packaged up in a capsule and it's being used in the classic object manager, we're going to do everything we can to ensure that stays compatible with future versions. And also the asset system itself, I should point out, has versioning built into it. So, if we select this and go into the basic tab, you see here that we have asset version, right? And so even if we were to create a new version of Greeble or a new version of the Global Pins asset, you can always roll back to a prior version of that same asset. And so by default, it's going to always grab the latest and greatest. But, if it's creating a compatibility issue, you can always roll back to the earlier version.
Yep, yep. There are some people asking about how do I understand this question? Be able to do selections in capsules with fields. I've never really wrapped my head around some of the more distribution type things, and I'm not even sure if there's much in the way of fields inside of nodes yet.
Yeah, we really don't have anything with fields built into the nodes yet. You could theoretically use the fields to generate a selection on a classic C4D object that then you pull into nodes and use those selections somehow in nodes. But I'm not quite sure how I'd show that. It's one of those things where you have to need it first.
Yeah. But yeah, there's not like a super smooth integration yet with field type things. The although it just reminded me about the blue noise stuff. Do you want to do a demo of the
Sure.
new distribution
Yeah.
type?
The blue noise stuff is super cool, and let me see if I can find sort of a starting file for that.
Yeah, I ended up building a fairly complicated one myself, but there's so many different ways of combining nodes right now that I'm like, I don't know that I'm doing this the right way, but it did
I
work.
think this is the one. Yeah. So yeah, I mean there's the surface blue noise and the surface scaled blue noise. And what these do basically is the whole idea behind blue noise or Poisson disk is that it creates a random distribution, a semi-random distribution, but the distribution is in a way that it will minimize overlaps and kind of keep a distance between each of the distribution points. So with the surface scaled blue noise, what you want to do always here is use an object radius of 1, and then you're going to control your sizing through the distribution itself. So, here we have you're going to put this on a surface. Here in this case, it's just going onto a plane. We'll feed that into, I've actually got this in the object group. So yeah, we're using this plane here as the surface that we're on, which for some reason you can't see, but we'll keep moving. It's just because I'm not pulling the matrix across, but so basically we're using this plane and the size of the plane and distributing on that, and so you can set the distance between each distribution point. Middle mouse. Okay. And you can set, the minimum size of each object and the maximum size, and you get these really cool like packing distributions. And really that's all there is to it. I mean, you can extrude that and you're off to the races. I mean, one thing that one of our developers, when he was building this, put together was sort of this virusy cell packed kind of a thing. And again, this is just using that surface scaled blue noise, so we can adjust the minimum and maximum sizes and get very different looks, but they're all kind of have that sort of cell packed type of an appearance.
Yeah, somebody's asking if it's only compatible with circles. It's not so much the circles; it's that there's a set radius. So, like, if you had a cube that would fit within that size, that would work as well. But circles will just fill in the space the best.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we could switch this to a hexagon, for instance. And again, I'm in the object group. There we go. So we could switch this to a hexagon, for instance. And again, you always want to make that radius 1, and you can see that it's kind of the same thing there. What you're going to see, if you let's see, 0.5 and 1. I mean, it'll work with any shape, but obviously, things that are squarer are probably not going to look as well packed, I guess we could say.
Right. I'm trying to think of a lot of things. I don't want to throw you for a loop on something, but when I was playing with it, I started getting into the more individual data so that I could control each individual one. So if you tell me if this is a bad idea, but could we turn that into a text spline and then have every iteration of the text be a different letter?
Oh, let me think through that. Yes. So if we were to make this a text, and obviously this is giving us our matrices. We need to make the height here 1, and we'll just say a letter. We'll use T, and of course everything is reversed, but we won't worry about that part. And then what we could do is take the index here and feed that into the text spline. And so, we're basically there right now. I think we have an ASCII character conversion node. That may be one that somebody's been playing with in the background. I can't remember if it's actually exists or not. Let's see, it would be in string. Yeah, we may not actually have that, but what you could also do is just do a build, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
And this just builds an array, and we could, say we want those to be strings, and we can say, let's say ROCKET, for instance, and then we could get element and feed our array in here and our index in there and feed that out as our text spline. And yeah,
right. It'll cycle through those letters.
Because this cycles indexes, then it just keeps cycling through those 5 elements or whatever.
Yeah.
6 elements.
With the just as because we're here, can we add color to these splines, and would those return different color, or would they keep on being white no matter what we feed in?
I don't know if you can add color to splines. I know that if they were objects, you could.
Yeah,
let's just add a color off,
and
we'll grab a hash.
And actually, if you want, can you go through and do a kind of technical explanation about the hash? Because I think it's wonderful, and I have been enjoying using it. And I've been mostly thinking about it as like a super range mapper.
Yeah, I mean, it's just randomness with a range built into it, basically. So you can set a maximum and a minimum value, and then it has the seed and the salt. And like you showed, you feed something into the salt, and then you can continue to modify the seed as sort of your randomness, and then it'll just output any of the the common data types, and in this case I'm pulling out color. Or what you could do is you could grab a basic gradient and you could feed a float into the position and the result into the color. Use our fantastic preset system to choose a color palette like pattern 3, and now you can lock it into a specific color palette.
Nice. Let's see. Well, since we're here, could we extrude those with the color?
What I would do there is extrude them before the color.
Yes.
So you feed a line to mesh in here, and that did not. What we need to do is not use the op input, I think, but actually pull the geometry as the. What did we do here? Maybe I should actually just grab an extrude. The extrusion should not be the part that's throwing me off here, but I was doing too well with the other stuff.
but that text is already like a giant array. So maybe you have to feed the text into the extrude and then distribute the extrude? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure it's possible.
Yeah, no, I think I did similar things. I definitely turned a spline into geometry and did a bunch of different colors, but I had a completely different hierarchy. Like, there's so many different ways of combining these.
Yeah. But yeah.
Oops, something happened.
So part of it may have been that we need the spline tessellation op always in things, and I think we got it. We just need to turn on auto dress. We are also.
I think it's extruding straight up right now.
So yeah, there we go.
There you go. And you get the color. Oh yeah, the scale, the
scaling in C2, yeah.
Yeah, but even that, like that's where things get interesting, because right now the blue noise is returning the scale, and it's returning that scale on X, Y, and Z. But you could explode out the X, Y, and Z into its individual components, tell the Y to be a set number like 0 or 1, and then rebuild that, and then it would only be scaling on X and Z.
Yeah.
And now you can just type in whatever text you want, get all the distributions. They should be, for the most part, not overlapping because of the blue noise. Probably even better if you did it from alignment center, but I guess they'd all be moving up a little. But anyway, you could keep going and going and going. These could be generating on the surface of a different piece of geometry. And yes, we changed what the letter is, but you could be changing the font on every iteration here. You could be changing and having a custom bevel on every single iteration.
Totally.
The amount that you take one piece of data and start passing it through to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. Like that's where the stuff starts getting super crazy.
Yep.
I'm gonna scroll through and see if I can find any questions. Can the pose library store any user data expresso controlled? I'm not sure I follow the question. In the pose, I haven't used the pose library too much. I haven't done any character animation since my video demoing what it did.
Yeah.
So sorry, I don't have a good quick answer for that.
Me either. I can't remember. Sorry.
Yeah.
Once we ship a version, that version's kind of out of my head, and I'm on to the next one. So.
Yeah, there's just so many different parts of cinema, and nodes are a whole new world. Let's see. Yeah, sorry, the question.
I see Fritz has been in here answering some questions. Thanks, Fritz.
Yes, appreciated. If in the YouTube chat, if you see Fritz, he's coded a bunch of stuff inside of cinema. I think one of the big ones was the Voronoi fracture, right?
Yeah, and he was also behind the selection string that is super awesome, as well as a whole bunch of other things. So I can't even begin to name the things that Fritz has contributed to. But yeah, it's as I mentioned, there's some of our programmers lurking, and in this case, not even just lurking, but actually contributing. Thanks, Fritz.
Yep. Well, that's what somebody was like, hey, where can I put a suggestion to Max on? I was like, well, for right now, put it in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, sorry, it's difficult to read questions about nodes because it takes a long time to...
Yeah, I'm having the same problem trying to parse what...
Usually you can... Yeah, you can usually scan a question and be like, okay, I get it. But it's like a specific node question. It's like, no, it's more involved. Yeah, Chop, that's a good question. I would be... Well, he's saying he wanted to have a chamfer with a point selection, because it's really fun doing like bevels or chamfers on a point, because you get like little circles around each point.
Right.
And driving that through some sort of fall off to drive how large or small they are. I'm certain there's a way to do it, but when it comes to the field integration, I mean, right now we could mathematically do it. We could do that doing math for what the distance from a particular axis would be or something like that.
Right. Yeah, you could build out those interactions, but yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, well, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to pop them in. When it comes to nodes, I'm trying to think of some of the other things. I mean, I myself could keep you busy for hours and hours, as I actually already have done, like with node questions. When we get the primitive, we've got the straight line inside of there. They're just actually, I know it's not super crazy complicated, but do you want to just show off the spline assembler and build some basic stuff there?
Sure. Yeah. In fact, let me pull up a sample
Well, wait.
file.
I'm going to request that you make one from scratch so we can see it step by step, and then pull up something fancier.
Okay. Um,
I always show
well,
everybody stuff from scratch.
so the spline assembler is sort of the basis behind building a spline primitive. So actually, if we pull a spline primitive group in, we're kind of setting ourselves up for being able to make this into an actual asset. And then within here, we can go ahead and build out whatever geometry we want. So we'll grab a spline assembler, and one of the things that's actually really cool here is the spline assembler actually has a NURBS-based spline. So you actually can control the weighting of each point. It's a new way of developing your splines. So let's grab a build node, and we'll go ahead and build out some vectors. So we'll just do 100, 100, 100, negative 100, negative 100, negative 100, 100, negative 100, 100. We just made a rectangle. And we'll feed that into the array, into the points. And then we need to say, yeah, go ahead and close that spline. Now, if we want to add some weights to this, we want to give it a float value, and we'll feed that into the weights. And in this case, we want to make these like 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and 1, let's say. Now, you won't see the result until you tessellate unless you switch into the basic shading, just because of some limitations that we have right now. But here you can see that we actually have some weighting on those points. And so you can actually use this to sort of create a soft chamfered spline based on some key points. It's kind of like B-splines plus. This is
it
really
feels
cool.
like a subdivision surface. Yeah, like a single polygon in a subdivision surface, and you're weighting the corners.
Right, and so you could take and like grab a spline primitive, for instance, and we could grab the points from that. We can get a point info node, and we can grab the geometry and feed that in the point positions, and now we're basing that on the rectangle here, but we have a primitive, right? So we can go and choose a star, for instance. And I think, is it super big, or
maybe the weights are weighted differently because it's
you know what it is? It's because we have a different length array.
Yeah.
But
and you just kill the weights off for now.
Yeah. But we could also, I think, instead of using a build, we'll use a fill array, and then we can just fill them all with the same value. So we'll fill them with 0.25, for instance, and we'll get the count of those points.
So yeah, the star is outputting a list of points. You're now saying how many are there, and then creating a big empty list of those, and then assigning a value to them.
And now we should be able to or maybe not.
It's not like
we may need to go -1.
Interesting. I can imagine that I bumped into that at one point.
There we go.
Maybe not, because now it's not showing up at all, which is implying it's not the same length.
I went a bridge too far. We'll just leave it there.
I was doing a bunch of stuff with splines and I never put tangents in. It's like, no, I could just do straight edges and then turn it into a B spline if need be.
Yeah. So I mean, but you basically get the idea here that we can build out and create custom things. You showed in yours using a spiral distribution to create a spline. So, again, lots of possibilities here that we just haven't had a chance to fully realize yet, off of having, splines built into the neutron core or the C node's core.
Could you get the result of this into the object manager as you've built it?
Only by saving this as an asset. If I want it in the object manager from the start.
Could you do a mesh the mesh object primitive and copy it into that? That'd be neat. So yeah, before we were dragging in like the modeling modifiers, but now here's a completely different type.
I need this one, the mesh primitive group. So there's currently the spline primitive group can't drag in as a capsule, but the mesh primitive group is basically the same thing. It just, the difference is the tagging, whether it shows up when you choose a mesh primitive in that menu or the spline primitive. So yeah, if we go back here to C nodes and grab this, copy that and bring it into here. Basically have the same thing there now.
Yeah, kill the scene one off so we only see the new. Okay, so now essentially you've created from scratch that spline, and now you've brought it into the object manager, and in the object manager, that is now a real object. So that is a spline that you've made via these points, and you could extrude it, you could sweep it. Could you run like soft body dynamics on it now? That's a dangerous thing. I didn't test it. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a baseball. That's kind of cool.
I think there's ghosts and baseballs and brick walls. Yeah.
So
it should be set up properly.
Oh, I turned it off.
Oops. Yep. Yeah, so that's moving. So yeah, you can now generate that spline, make it do whatever you want via the nodes, make it to a real object in the object manager. And it seems like then run it through the other cinema systems. So it just goes to, these capsules are the first time that we're able to, there it's colliding with it. It's the first time that we're actually able to interact with this and put them into the scene to do kind of like something for we're getting out of the world of nodes and back into kind of traditional cinema.
Right. Yeah, well, and you could, put this into a volume, for instance. Except I've lost it.
Oh yeah, it
fell.
Turn it on and off. Yeah.
But there
rewind,
it is down there.
Rewind the time all the way. You don't want to be running that on a dynamic object now. Just generically, I'd kill the tag off.
Oh, yeah, the tag's still there. That's the problem. Okay. So now we've got that into a volume, for instance. So yeah, lots of possibilities once we get in and get some time to be creative.
Yep. So many combinations, and somebody was asking about the ability to like generate random points, and you could totally be generating random things. You could be adding randomness on top of this one. You could even, I guess, even right now, can you just duplicate that up, like put a smaller end side inside of this end side via the nodes?
Sure, we could.
Just as a way of showing it's kind of like you've made a new primitive. Yeah, and I've got another thing to try after that.
And we can. I'm a little rusty with the nodes. It's been a minute.
Can the two geometries be fed into a connect and work that way, and then be fed into a single point info?
Oh yeah, we could do that for sure. I was going to merge the arrays, but yeah, that's a good way of doing it.
Well, just like in regular or vanilla cinema, there's a couple dozen ways to do anything. In nodes, there's just as many new ways of doing things.
Yeah, if not more.
Yeah. So if this does work, and then I guess they're the same radius right now. Yeah, there you go. Oh, look, they're cross. Oh, they crisscross each other. Interesting. That makes sense because each one would need to be fed into the spline assembler is like a separate node, so I wasn't even thinking about that. But yeah, now you've got
Yeah.
two. You've just got one giant list of points. So yeah, of course, one list is going to end and the next begin, so they'll crisscross on top of each other. But hey, that's almost kind of a spiral going.
That's cool.
Put several of those, and you get like a crazy spiral going. But yeah, but what I was going to suggest now to show people is promoting some of those parameters. Although, is this object set up to promote parameters?
Yeah, we could do that. So we can go ahead and connect node to the root on that radius, and we'll connect node to the root on this radius. And let's see, this is the, I don't know which is which. I guess this is the inner and the outer. And now up here we have the inner and the outer.
But you see those controls are now directly on the object. So this is almost like a little mini plugin.
Right. Totally. And we can go in and let's go ahead and add in the sides. And now we can tweak that.
Yep, individually, or you could have that one parameter tie into both of them, or be a multiplier. The inner one is always half the amount of the outer one. So yeah, the ability to just start combining everything. And even here, you see there's just a couple of nodes, and they output that final result. It's now in, Object Manager, so usable vanilla Cinema, and it can be fed into Dynamics, it can be fed into the volume builder, swept or extruded.
Totally.
Let's see. There's people are saying that there needs to be a teapot primitive, a cow primitive.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was going in and looking for different types of primitives that we could create.
I know it's not a primitive.
Just haven't had time.
I know it's not primitive, but you want to show that assets could be brought into the interface.
Oh yeah. So if say this dual mesh operator is something you want to do a lot, or let's actually just go with like a classic object. So if I want to let's
party hat.
Okay, so if I just right click and choose customize palettes, can drag the party hat right up into the palette, and now I have my little party hat button.
Yep, and that's just a model that was brought into the asset browser, but now can be dragged in as an icon. So it's almost like that's a little mini tool by itself, like just getting integrated directly. And you can always customize crazy palettes. I showed that in my video where you can combine several different tools and then collapse them down into a single icon that can become a flyout. And of course, those can become context sensitive if you wanted to.
Yep.
Yep, so many different combinations.
Somebody's requested. Said that I was going to show something and I forgot what it was now.
Oh, I don't know what it was.
What's somebody requesting? Maybe that'll spark my memory. Oh, I know what I was going to say. This is kind of something that we haven't really talked about, but there is an option now. See how I can show this. Well, we'll just do this, but if you have, let's do it this way. So if you have an object like the pin flag, you saw in that global pins that I had the ability to choose between the various ones. Mm-hmm. So we needed a way to actually embed objects inside of the assets. So what we've got now is this opportunity where you can, I'm just going to go ahead and connect and delete this, and then we'll drag it into the node editor. And here on the geometry, we can choose to copy the value.
Copy the value.
Which
copy type? Copy
isn't showing up. There's a way to do this, and I forgot it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar, so I can't help.
Copy value, and then we can create value node from clipboard. And now we have that as an object. So we can we'll just feed that straight into the geometry here instead. And okay, I did something wrong. But there's a way now to embed the geometry into your assets, and that's what we did with that global pins.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah. So if you dig into that asset, which again, all the assets, the cool thing is that you can go in and choose to edit the asset, and you can see all of the gnarly stuff that I did when I built this. But if you go in here, you'll see that here we have the tack and the pin and the flag, and they're just stored data within this asset. And then, of course, we just got a switch node to choose between them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just for everybody out there, I know that, a lot of people use things like Espresso, but not everybody does. And when you look at nodes, it might feel intimidating that it's so crazy. And, right now it is a lot. There's a lot to learn, and it's still continuously changing. So don't feel like you're left out yet. Like it's not quite ready for being fully out there in the world. But when you see a big final setup like that, there's a good chance that when Rick opens that up, he's like, I don't know where anything is anymore. While you're building it, it's like, okay, I made a very simple thing. Like I've got a pin and it's getting output. And then you make a couple nodes. It's like, okay, now the pin goes on the correct spot on the sphere. And then you bundle that up and you move it to a spot. And you're like, okay, now the next pin gets generated. And as you work through, it's very logical to step through. So at the end of the day, you see 100 nodes. It's like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. This is crazy. But while you're building it, it's actually very logical as you step through.
Totally. And, we do have the ability to add the comments onto the nodes. This is the one that does the stuff.
Yeah. Always a good idea to.
And those show up right here, and you can hide them or show them. And, we'll be looking at building in more and more ways to sort of organize those nodal trees so they're sort of easier to understand when you have to jump back to them. But I have been really trying deliberately to add comments.
Yeah. Well,
so
and it also goes to
go back and realize.
Yeah. Well, there's doing comments and organizational for yourself, and then doing it for somebody else who might open up the file. But keep in mind, there's also the ability to grab a whole cluster of nodes, put it into a group, and it's like, okay, cool. Label that group, and it's like, okay, in this group, I fixed the geometry, and then it just now you don't have a giant. Those 100 nodes aren't eating up all the space. Now they're the one little node that you could go inside if you need to change that aspect of it.
Right. Yep. Somebody's asking about the resource editor. We have made some enhancements to it in this version, or some, fixes and whatnot. It's still, definitely a work in progress, but, it's definitely something that, we are eating our own dog food here. We're using all of these tools to build these capsules. So yeah, it's, we're learning how to, it looks like I'm in developer mode, so it looks really crazy right now. But we're learning how to build all these things out ourselves, and seeing the opportunities for improvement.
Yep. Well, I'm just very happy that there's the propagate port right now, because that goes a really long way. It's still, it can still use some streamlining, but that goes a long way to be like, okay, cool, I made a tool and it's trapped inside the world of nodes. Now here's the 10 parameters that are important. Promote those up a layer, and cool, now I never need to go into the nodes again.
Yep. I think we got into the node section. I don't want to leave without mentioning the spline import functionality that we added.
Oh yeah.
Any Illustrator file of any version now, we're using PDF basically to bring in all of those splines.
No more saving down to version 8.
We bring in sort of a tag that gives you the metadata of what the color of the spline is and the stroke width. But we've also made it possible to use the vector object. And so this gives you a parametric option where you can go in and tweak the extrude depth or the layer offset of each layer. Basically, we automatically build an extrusion from each filled path and a stroke from each stroke path. And in a lot of cases, this can be a good starting point to just getting a 2D logo into 3D. And then you can always make it editable and go in and deal with individual letters and do fun stuff with them.
Yeah, and as
We
long as
also
it's
added
still
support for SVGs along the way too. So, so in addition to supporting AIs, you can bring in SVGs.
yeah, it's very nice. And when it comes to that object that got imported, that's a live link to the file. So
Yep.
if you go and you update your Illustrator file, you can just click one button and it'll refresh in Cinema and show you the updated version there. And then something I had just done on a whim, but I had taken a dynamics tag and just put it directly on here, and each individual extrude like fell apart properly. So it's like, yep,
Yep.
it can even still be parametric and have full dynamics run on it.
Yep. Yeah, and so this is super handy. Somebody asked sort of what the difference is between this and the CV ArtSmart plugin. This is a completely new development, and it adds a lot of more robustness. It's obviously all C++ now, whereas ArtSmart was Python, and it supports some new features like some of the color profile transformations. Symbols are now supported. That was something that we didn't support previously in ArtSmart. So you're basically just going to get a lot more robust and reliable import of the splines. And of course, we added the SVG support as well.
Yep. Excellent. We've only got 5 minutes left. Like I said, I've got a hard out today. But is there anything else to sneak in? Do you want to do a quick demo of the track modifier, maybe the spring stuff?
Oh, sure.
And there's even just somebody asking about it if there's anything that might involve character stuff.
Yeah, so this one I have to give EJ credit for the scene file.
That looks very EJ.
He's much better at animating spears than I am. Basically what we have here is this is sort of the original animation, and then these are all modifications that were made just by adding the track modifier tag. So I'm just going to modify the original one here so that we can kind of see what's going on. And, we can go in here and we can add springiness to it. And, you can adjust your stiffness and your drag and really add this secondary animation on top of the keyframed animation that's already there. We have options here in posterization, so you can make stop motion effects. You
got to zero out that spring layer or put a new tag on.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. And so here we have, a stop motion effect. And the cool thing is that, this is animatable. So we could go from, regular speed and then, bring it into a stop motion effect. Or we can actually mix stop motion effects with, other fully animated things in the same scene. So you've got the posterization. Let's clear that. And you can offset the animation. So we can just have it wait 30 frames to start. We can set the time factor, so we can have it be twice as fast or half as fast.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with the step frames.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the problem. Let's turn that off.
This is a very simplified scene, but in my demo, you'll see me doing this on top of an entire motion capture hierarchy, and so things like the smooth stuff and the springiness on top of it goes away a long way on top of an entire mocap rig.
Totally, yeah, and smoothing can really come in handy for jitters in mocap animation and stuff like that too. So yeah. That's another one that folks are going to have fun playing with, I think.
Yeah. I think that covers most of the new stuff. There's little things sprinkled in all over the place. But yeah, is there any final questions that we can tackle that anybody has? Jump in now or forever hold your peace. I'm checking other questions. Lots of conversation going on.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. It's hard to follow this chat at the same time.
I ignore it. I completely ignore the chat while I'm answering a question. I jump back
Oh
in.
yeah, I remember that from all those times that I've been, Chris, it's the button's over here.
If I there have been times I try and pay attention to the chat,
Yeah.
and you just keep on. It goes to what often happens is I have a very specific thing in mind, and other people aren't thinking the same thing, and they're trying to answer a question for you, but they have a different train of thought. So it ends up with a lot of dead ends. So I've just learned to be like, I just have to focus as long as I can, and then ask a specific question. And that's why everybody knows that once I start wrapping up a question, feel free to repost, because who knows how much time has passed. PHM is asking for particles from nodes one day. I'll second that request. I'd love to see a nice new particle system. That'd be a good way of getting people into the world of nodes, would be some new particles.
Yep.
Let's see. Can you use fields with, what's the motion modifier? Unless Kent Williams...
I think he's talking about the track modifier.
Track modifier, yeah. I don't think there's fields inside that.
No, there's no fields, but that would be interesting to see if there was a way to bring those together somehow.
Yeah. If the springiness could be driven via a field, like just the strength, that would go a long way. That should totally be doable. There's another request. Quick, everybody. What's another request? How many requests can we get to Rick before he goes? Is there a way for an object to pass a polygon selection to a capsule? Well, you can get access to selections.
Yeah, when you use a classic object in the node context, the geometry will include all the selections and the vertex maps and everything that are already applied to that.
Yeah, when you saw earlier,
object.
when I dragged in the selection node, I think that you could also just type in the name of any given node, right? And it would take that on. Would that work from just a polygon selection tag on top of an object, or does it only work internal to the nodes?
Sorry, I completely missed what you were saying because I was trying to read the chat.
Oh, yeah. Just the select node. You can type in the name of a selection. I just don't know for sure if you can do a name of a selection from an external selection tag on just say the name.
So.
But I'm assuming you can. But
yeah,
you
you should be able to.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we don't have to read them all out, but you're starting to get a list of things people would love to see. So.
Yeah. Why'd you do that, Chris?
Because it would be funny. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody.
I'm not
going
to address each one of them individually, but I'll just say that these are all great ideas, guys, and some things that are definitely things that we've been talking about and looking at. So.
Yep. Well, it can be a list that he just copy and pastes, and you can take a look at sometime later.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks everybody for coming in and asking questions, checking out the new stuff. I'll have a regular episode next week, but I think there's only gonna be like 1 or 2 more episodes in the season. We're at the end. We're already past 30, which is a pretty good amount. Thank you so much, Rick, for joining me as a guest again. I think this is your 4th time being a guest. Maybe actually, it's the 4th time since we started linking the folders. Right. But yeah. But,
oh no, I'm not frozen.
Yeah. But yeah, that should actually wrap all this up. Again, thank you, everybody. And anybody who happens to be in Chicago, I'll see you at Half-Res soon, like later tonight. And otherwise, yeah, that should do it. All right. Yeah. Thanks again, Rick. Thanks everybody.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Bye-bye. And